Well, good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome for all of you. I'm happy to see that over 350 people have registered for this webinar. This says at least the importance of the topic. The title of the webinar is How does feed contribute to a future-proof poultry production? This webinar is the second in a series of webinars on the way to VIV Europe 2022, which will be held from May 31 till June 2 in Utrecht in the Netherlands. This webinar is organized by VIV and Dutch Poultry Centre. Who is VIV? VIV is the organizer of a lot of well-known international trade fairs, focusing on production worldwide, such as VIV Europe, VIV MEA in the Middle East, VIV Qingdao in China, VIV Asia in Thailand, and VIV Turkey. The Dutch Poultry Centre. The Dutch Poultry Centre is a network organization with more than 100 Dutch companies as members. All these companies are active in the poultry industry worldwide. Who am I myself? I'm your moderator of today, and I am the Relations Manager of the Dutch Poultry Centre. My name is Jan Hulsebos. I studied agriculture with a specialization in animal husbandry from 1973 until 1978. After that, I started working at an international training center, Barneveld College in the Netherlands, as a trainer on poultry husbandry from 1979 till 2008. From 2008 till 2017, I was working for a German company with the name Salmet. I was a regional business manager there, designing, selling, and implementing poultry projects, mainly in the Middle East and also sometimes in Asia. From 2017 until now, I have my own company in which I support companies, organizations, and governments on the area of poultry production. And one of the things that I do is Relations Manager for this Dutch Poultry Centre. What will happen in the coming hour? In the coming hour, 4 of our Dutch Poultry Centre members will give their input on the topic of the webinar. How does feed contribute to a future-proof poultry production? We will start with the keynote speaker, Mr. Wim Beeks of Schothorst Feed Research. He will explain what we should understand with future-proof poultry production. What do we mean exactly with that, and which are the key factors for future-proof poultry production? After Mr. Wim Beeks, we will have 2 pitches for feed additive companies. Mr. Brecht Bruneel, the company Orffa, and Ms. Rien van Vuren, company Darling Ingredients. They will give a short about the products they can deliver or they have made for future-proof poultry production. And finally, we have the pitch of a researcher, Dr. Laura Starr, who will tell more about feeding management of layers, of course, with the aim to work more efficient and more future-proof. After the presentations and the pitches, we will have a question and answer session, in which the audience, of course, can also bring in their questions via the chat. So don't hesitate if you have questions during the presentations to write them in the chat. If we have enough time, we will answer them. In case there is not enough time to answer all the questions, we will collect the questions and send them with the answers to you by email. So let's start. The first, as I said, is for our keynote speaker, Mr. Wim Beeks, Schothorst Feed Research. Wim Beeks has more than 35 years of experience in international animal production. After completing his food and agri MBA study at University of Wageningen in 2004, Beeks continued his career in several sales and marketing positions in the international animal feed and additives business. As from May 1 in 2021, he is responsible for the sales and consultancy team at SFR, Schothorst Feed Research, a well-known research institute on the area of feed in the Netherlands. The screen is yours, Wim.
Okay, Jan, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm happy to be a keynote speaker today. And, you know, as global population is growing and per capita income is increasing, the demand for animal protein will increase, and poultry meat is gaining popularity and is in many countries the preferred source of animal protein by many consumers worldwide. Consequently, global poultry production volume is growing at a stable rate of around 2% per year, and this trend is forecasted to continue. Feed covers about 60% of the total cost of animal production, and nutrition provides necessary basic nutrients for animals' performance and, of course, maintenance. How does feed contribute to a future-proof poultry production? I think there is no single strategy for future-proof poultry feed. It strongly depends on the area you are living, historical patterns of consumption of different animal proteins, and the requirements that society sets for the production of poultry and thus the production of poultry feed. There is great variation in requirements and parameters for poultry production in different areas of the world, such as economics, availability of raw materials, ingredients, and water, the use of hybrid genetics, animal health, animal welfare, meat and egg quality, but also environmental aspects such as nitrogen, phosphor, copper and zinc, soil levels, ammonia and dust emissions, and lately, carbon dioxide footprint. And that is why animal and poultry nutrition in particular is such an interesting and dynamic field of scientific research and development. And SFR, Schotels Feed Research, is private, independent research and knowledge organization for animal nutrition, founded in 1934. Our knowledge is based on more than 85 years of research, with over 4,000 scientific nutritional trials with live animals under real-world farm conditions, and more than 200,000 different feed ingredients from across the globe. The introduction of modern technologies, such as genomics in poultry breeding, has increased faster genetic progress and development of the commercial hybrids, satisfying different market segments. And these hybrids have specific nutrient requirements, and tailored diet formulations have to be developed. And next to fast-growing and highly feed-efficient hybrids, slow-growing hybrids have entered in the market. This was primarily initiated by animal rights activists, but nowadays it's also supported by many food service and food retail companies, partners in the so-called European Chicken Commitment. In the layer sector, we have seen a move away from cage systems into aviary, free range, and organic egg production systems. The housing and production systems has a substantial impact on birds' nutritional requirements and on the way we formulate diets. As from January 1, Germany has implemented a new regulation in which the males of laying hens are not allowed to be euthanized at day old anymore and have to be reared. The first SFR trial rearing layer males up to a live weight of 1.4 kilo at 14 weeks of age has finished and gained some interesting insights. After the ban in the EU on the use of antibiotics in feed as from January 1, 2006, and the further restriction of curative on-farm antibiotic use in subsequent years, the animal nutrition working area expanded into poultry diets formulation for gut health. And this has resulted in large-scale development and application of feed additive technologies, such as organic acids, yeast components, essential oils, herbs and spice extracts, organic minerals, short, medium chain fatty acids, among other pre and probiotics, and with success. As an example, the use of antibiotic substance in animal production in the Netherlands reduced with 70% in 10 years' time. In areas with intensive animal farming, the concerns on pollution of soil and drinking water resources initiated formulation of nitrogen and phosphorus efficient diets and reduced levels of copper and zinc. Enzymes such as proteinates, phytases entered the market and were formulated into poultry diets to boost nitrogen and phosphorus efficiency. In feed and copper and zinc levels reduced, and better available organic minerals, trace minerals, replaced the inorganic sources. The latest disease outbreaks and the global COVID pandemic disrupted feed raw material trade and distribution patterns, leading to higher prices. And nowadays, climate change and life cycle assessment will further quantify the eco footprint of animal production. The new eco parameters potentially will redefine the way we value traditional raw materials, such as soy, wheat, and corn, in conventional poultry diets. And in the same time, these additional eco values will open opportunity for new ingredients, alternative planting proteins, processed animal proteins, insects, to be used to formulation of sustainable future poultry diets. Poultry producers and poultry feed producers are trying to balance all these requirements from their local markets in order to determine a sustainable poultry feed production. And in the same time, earn a decent return on their investments. Conclusion, there is no one single feed solution for future-proof poultry production. All over the world, poultry integrators, poultry feed producers, and poultry farmers are looking for innovative technologies and nutritional solutions that contribute to animal health, performance, welfare, sustainable production methods, and thereby increase social acceptance of poultry production to allow further consumption, growth, and healthy and safe poultry meat and eggs. There is a great need for scientific knowledge and practical research in sustainable poultry nutrition. And SFR translates the latest scientific insights and knowledge into practical, applicable nutritional solutions and helps poultry producers and feed producers to implement them. We are happy to assist you in your challenge to formulate future-proof poultry diets. Jan, ik kan jou niet horen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wim Beeks, for your presentation. Well, indeed, it becomes clear, as you say, that there is not one solution for future poultry production. I can understand that after working 30 or almost 40 years in the poultry business, it is also clear for me that things will change. I can remember when I started teaching, in fact, the most important thing was to let the broilers grow as fast as possible. And now we have slow growing broilers. Things can change. But that keeps life also interesting. I think now we go to the next speaker. Let me introduce you shortly. Our second speaker is Mr. Brecht Bruneel from Orffa company. Brecht Bruneel is graduated from the University of Ghent in Belgium as a master in biochemistry and biotechnology with a major in microbiology. Soon after his graduation, he joined Orffa. Orffa is a feed additive company with a global presence. During his role as quality and innovation manager, he learned about the ins and the outs of the feed and the feed additives business. He applied this knowledge during his 4-year role as a technical manager, traveling around the world, advising feed companies and others. Nowadays, he fulfills the role as innovation manager, exploring and finding new innovative products to feed the animals of the future. Well, we are anxious to hear about your things you are working on, Mr. Brecht. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan, for that kind introduction. So indeed, feed contributes to future poultry production. It's a very important question. And I believe there are two important hurdles to overcome when we want to improve feed and make it future-proof for poultry production. So feed is, of course, a major cost. And next to that, there is also a major environmental impact coming from feed. And I believe very strongly that feed additives can be part of a solution to counteract both of these hurdles. So we as Orffa, we are engineering your feed solutions already since 1967, started in Belgium, and now we are a global company. We started with commodities, focusing on amino acids, for example, and now we have a very diversified portfolio, also looking at specialized feed additives, special trace minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, and also some digestibility enhancers, such as nutritional emulsifier, for example. So looking at these hurdles that we need to overcome regarding feed in order to future-proof poultry production, I strongly believe that feed additives can actually hit two birds with one stone. So the one stone is then the feed additives, and the two birds that we need to hit is, of course, the feed cost and the environmental impact. Looking at, for example, these digestibility enhancers, which I already mentioned, the nutritional emulsifier, we clearly see from our trials and also our customers worldwide that this is a very good opportunity to reduce feed costs and simultaneously reduce the environmental impact of the feed and also the poultry production. So next to these hurdles that needs to be overcome in order to future-proof poultry production, I also believe that if we can improve the healthiness of the birds, we are on a very good pathway to future-proof poultry production. So not only for the health of the bird, but also for the health of the consumer. So there are already some feed additives on the market, which can improve, of course, the health of the animal during its life. But next to that, they also simultaneously improve the value of the animal product that comes from the poultry production. So we are enabling the consumers to actually consume a more valuable product, which also brings more health to their life. And again, this is hitting two birds with one stone. So at the one hand side, we have the feed additives, which will improve the healthiness of the chickens. And on the other hand side, we can improve human health. So I strongly believe that this is also a very important point to future-proof poultry production and ensure that consumers in the future will still enjoy and are eager to eat poultry. So to conclude, feed additives provide a very important opportunity, not only to reduce feed cost, but also the environmental impact. And they are very potent to improve the healthiness of birds and also of their consumers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation, Brecht. We certainly will come back later in the question and answer session with questions to you. There is, of course, a lot of interesting things going on. Making people more healthy because of the chicken. Yeah, that would be nice. So of course, we have heard already about these things, that chickens should have not too much fat and so on. But yes, of course, it would be very interesting if there is possibilities on that. And as you said, it was already done. Okay, then we go to the ladies. Now it's the time for the ladies. And we will start with the first lady, that is Miss Karine van Vuren from Darling Ingredients. To introduce her shortly, from 1983 to 1988, she studied animal science at University in Wageningen, with a specialization in animal nutrition. In 1998, Karine started working as an animal nutritionist for a large feed company. In that time, the name was Hendricks Fooders. Now the name is changed, but in that time it was one of the largest feed companies in the Netherlands. In 1996, she started at Cebison. Nowadays, the name is Sonac. And Sonac is a part of the Darling Ingredients company. Her current responsibility at Darling Ingredients are nutritionist, including research and development, and regulatory affairs with the focus on animal byproducts. She is further a member of the technical committee of EFPRA, European Fat Processors and Rendering Association, and she is representing the company in the EAPA, European Blood Processors Association, and in the FFPA, European Former Foodstuffs Processors Association. I think you must have a lot of the email addresses with all these associations, but the screen is yours. Success.
Thank you, Wim, for your nice introduction. Dear all, I'm glad that I have the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you for that. I'm working for an international company, Darling Ingredients, already mentioned, which you probably will not know. In short, we are mainly active in the production of animal proteins, fats, and phosphates, all produced out of co-products from the meat production, and depending on the origin, we can market them in feed, fertilizer, food, or pharma. As all of you will know, part of the European Green Deal is the farm to fork strategy. One of the pillars of this farm to fork strategy is the circular economy. To realize future-proof poultry production, we need to use circular feed ingredients. We all agree in that, I think, and Wim Beeks also mentioned that. To realize less imports from third countries, more local resources, one of the options for the supply of the proteins in the feed can be processed animal proteins. In short, PAPs or PAPs, whatever you want to say it, how you want to name it. They are nutritious, sustainable, and local. By their high nutritional value, they can supply essential amino acids, digestible phosphorus, and they deliver energy due to the fats still present in the PAPs. Further, they can help to improve the welfare of chickens by a nice plumage, healthy feeds, and stronger bones. They are sustainable because they are produced out of co-products from the meat production. This results in a low carbon footprint compared to protein sources from third countries, like, for example, standard soybean meal, especially when the LULUC, land use land change factor, is taken into account. They are always local because they are produced out of co-products from the local meat industry. So they can help in the desire from the European consumers to consume more local. In fact, the whole supply chain from the farmer, the processor, the poultry feed producers, till the poultry meat consumer can take advantage from this new circular poultry feed ingredient. To produce those PAPs, the whole supply chain needs to be certified by the competent authorities. This is necessary to guarantee that this supply chain is completely dedicated to only one single type of species. For poultry feeds, this means that we can only source byproducts from porcine meat producers to produce this valuable PAP. A safe, healthy, natural, and local new protein source for poultry feeds in Europe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Green, for your presentation. See, we are very perfectly on schedule. Every compliments to all the presenters and pitchers for staying nicely in time. We go to the last presenter, last but not least, and this is Mrs. Laura Starr. I'm very proud that I am able to say that we have a real star here in our panel. And well, Laura, you are the researcher here in this group, and certainly some interesting research done in poultry, and we would like to hear about your story. The word is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for this introduction. Yeah, from a research point of view, I think that for a future-proof poultry production, we have to feed the birds as accurately as possible. So in the current poultry farming, we try to optimize the conditions to have the best circumstances for the birds so that they can realize optimal performance. So the housing systems, climate, lighting, and also the feed are all adapted to support the birds. All the conditions, so also the feed, are customized to support the total flock, but we know that there are large differences in feed intake among individual birds. For instance, in laying hens, and then I talk about laying hens of the same breed, same age, housed under the same conditions, that can show a difference in feed intake ranging from 50 to 140 grams per hen per day. So most likely, these laying hens also differ in nutrient requirements. And by giving all birds the same diet, many birds will eat more nutrients than needed, so they will have an oversupply, while others will eat less nutrients than needed, having an undersupply. So, and you can all understand that both are not in favor of production performance, health, and welfare of the birds. So to support the nutrient requirement of all birds in a flock, it is therefore necessary to have a feeding system that can feed each individual bird with a customized diet that is optimal for the support of that specific bird. So by providing customized diets, so-called precision feeding, the nutrients are in balance with the requirements of an individual bird. And this will be beneficial for the production performance, health, and welfare of the birds. But besides, feedstuffs will be used more efficient and nutrient excretion will be reduced, resulting in less environmental burden. So, of course, it can be questioned if we must go to a system that can support each individual bird, or that we can go to a system in which we support subgroups within a flock. For instance, making a distinction between birds with a high, middle, or relatively low egg mass production. But in an ideal future situation, we can feed each individual bird to their requirements. So insight in production performance, body weight, and maybe other parameters or markers are needed to collect the data on which the nutrient requirement and the related diet composition can be based on. So the first step in precision feeding will be to identify and track individual birds. And then a second step will be to integrate all the collected data of each individual bird and to supply individual birds with customized diets according to their nutrient requirements. So, and I think in this way, we can meet the nutrient requirement of birds as accurately as possible. And this will be in the interest of a safe, high quality, and an efficient production, while we also ensure the lowest possible load on the environment. And as Wim Beeks already said, we have also taken into account the given conditions in which the birds are housed, and we have to consider the specific production objectives, the health and the welfare. But I think for the future, precision feeding will be needed in poultry farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for this interesting topic, which is, I think, for the future. I have the feeling also, that's a question, Laura, that in fact, it looks a little bit what we are already doing with cattle or with sows, for example, who have a kind of belt in which the computer can recognize the sow or the cow and then give the correct amount of feed. This is a little bit the same, but it's maybe not so easy to give all the chickens just a belt with a sensor, so maybe we have to find something else on that.
Yeah, you can place a check or something, or
we will see. I can remember that it was some years ago when I was still working at Barneveld College, the training center, that we had broiler parent stock where the already had a belt around their feet, and then when they were weighed, they were recognized by the computer, and we knew from every individual cock what was his body weight.
Yeah.
And of course, then you see certainly differences between the different cocks. Well,
yeah.
It's a little bit the same story, I think. Yeah. Well, certainly some more questions for you will come later. Yeah. Then now exactly we are at 10:30. It's planning. Well, how is it possible? That we can start with our Q&A session or the panel discussion, but I think, well, a real discussion is maybe difficult online. I think it's the best to do Q&A. There are certainly a number of questions. I will also ask to look and maybe register some questions. I have already some questions here. Let me have a look. Well, one of the first questions, let's then start with the first speaker also, that is Mr. Wim Beeks. If you have to summarize very short, then what are in fact the main key factors for future-proof poultry production?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jan. I think it's to sum up what I already said was basically that the contributors are the first one and most important thing is to determine nutritional requirement for the poultry. for poultry species in circumstances valid for your own local specific situation. That means the hybrid you're using, the phase of production, the housing system, the climate, the meat and egg quality you want to realize. So this is the first and most important one: determine the real nutritional requirement. The second one, of course, is to consider the additional requirements, such as animal welfare, gut health. There are still countries in the world where antibiotics are used, where nitrogen or phosphorus is not an issue. So these additional parameters should also be taken into account. CO2, carbon dioxide footprint, and dust output is another one which is clearly in some areas a problem. Then the third one, and that's it's to use the accurate nutrient values and digestibility coefficients of available feedstuffs to formulate and optimize your least cost poultry diet. It's very important to use these accurate figures, data, because sometimes you have digestibilities of protein of 90%, but there are also proteins which have a digestibility of 30%. So I think it's very important to use accurate nutritional values and digestibility coefficients. Yeah, just it's logic to say SFR is your partner in this in poultry nutrition.
Yeah, I understand a little bit of advertisement, but at least if there is questions regarding feed formulation or how to formulate the most efficient feed, I understand that CFR of Schottorst Feed Research is also doing training on this kind of topics. So yes, should there people who want to know more about these things and to formulate the perfect feed, there are certainly possibilities for that. Okay, thank you for that answer. Then, well, I go to the next, also the second speaker, but also the next question then. Yeah, as we see, of course, broiler production nowadays worldwide is growing absolutely a lot. At the moment, I'm very happy that I can say that poultry is the most eaten meat in the world. Also because the broiler is rather efficient in this. And now I come to my question, Brecht. Which feed additive from your portfolio is there available to make this broiler production even more environmental friendly, and in which way do you make it more environmental friendly then? Because it's easy to say it's more environment friendly, but then I would like to know what is happening then. Yeah. Can you explain about that?
Yes, that's a very good question. So as already mentioned in my pitch, I think the most important feed additives in that respect are the digestibility enhancers. I lightly touched on the nutritional emulsifier that we have in our portfolio. We are very proud of that product because it's the sales are high and the customers also appreciate it worldwide. And this is actually because a nutritional emulsifier is able to improve the digestibility of the fat to a very high extent. And in general, also the energy digestibility. So if we can achieve this, then we can reformulate actually the diet, we can energy reduce it, we can remove some fat from the diet, whilst maintaining the performance of the animals, which is of course very important. Because the nutritional emulsifier, because it improves the digestibility of the fat, it will actually compensate for the fat that you take out and maintain the performance of the animals. So in that respect, this type of digestibility enhancer, nutritional emulsifier, is a very important tool to reduce the environmental impact of the feed. Because in the end, when we remove some fat from the diet, we improve the environmental impact of the feed and also subsequently the poultry production. Sorry. To make it a little bit more practical, what we have done for our customers, we have done quite a lot of trials, digestibility trials and performance trials with this type of additive. And what we recently also executed was a life cycle assessment. So we collaborated with a Dutch consultancy called sorry, I just forgot the name.
Well, I am at least happy that you collaborate with a Dutch consultancy.
Yes, that's it. So they are a Dutch consultancy. I remember the name. It's Blonk Consultants, and they have actually provided us with a life cycle assessment of these trials that we have done. And there we actually see that we can reduce the environmental impacts expressed in CO2 equivalents per kilogram of live weight by 3%. So this is very high. And if we make it more practical for the Dutch poultry production in general, so we can see, or we can say 1 million ton of poultry meat per year. And if we use this type of nutrition emulsifier, we can actually reduce the impact by 10%. So in total, we can actually save 10% of the Dutch climate agreement for animal husbandry. So this is a huge impact just by reformulating the diet and using this nutritional emulsifier. So I think this is a very important point. And yeah, that's my answer to the question.
Yeah, thank you, Brecht. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Just a question for me. These tests are, I think, done in the Netherlands or at least in Western Europe. In other countries in the world where maybe the situation is different regarding feed, regarding raw materials, do you think the same results are possible, or is that difficult to say?
Well, in the end, we can see that, yeah, of course, in different parts of the world, there are different fat types being used. So it's not always soybean oil, but also other fat types. Yeah. Luckily, we have tested all these different fat types also with our nutritional emulsifier, and we can clearly see that it also brings a benefit with different fat types, not only vegetable fat or vegetable oil, but also animal fat. So in that respect, we see that the application is more or less global. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now that sounds perfect. Sometimes I hear also, often I get the question, yeah, this works in Europe, but does it also work for us? And well, that's of course a very realistic question. Okay, then I have a question here for Miss Karin. Karin, yeah, as Darling, what you are doing is working with of course animal protein, processing dead animals. Maybe it's not so nice to say it that way. No, not correct.
No, you are not correct. I'm not speaking about the dead animals.
Very good. Then please correct me then.
And the dead animals are only used for energy purposes in Europe.
Okay.
So perfect. Never in feed. No.
Okay, that was indeed already my first way of thinking. I think, hey, but then I have another question. Since when can processed animal proteins, PAP, be used in feeds for poultry in Europe?
That's a good question. It's only very recent. The European Commission published in August 2021 a new regulation, and it's published on the 7th of September only, 2021. So it's very recently that it's reauthorized in Europe. And only for the non-ruminant PAPs, and only for PAPs are per definition derived from healthy animals which entered very healthy the slaughterhouse.
Okay.
To be clear. Yeah.
And the reason that it is non-ruminant, what is the reason? I think I know, but
yeah, the only reason is, I think, history. Okay. Not for sure, not science. Okay. So in this case, in Europe, there is still a kind of a heritage of the BSE crisis from more than 20 years ago. And ruminant is still sensitive for a lot of politicians. Yeah. So I think in the end, but it will cost some time. Mm. So it costed already 20 years to get back the non-ruminant products. Okay. So another 10 years, I don't know.
Let's have a webinar after 10 years again and then see what happens.
Yeah, but it's pure politics. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That is, well, of course, you hear often that story of BSE and so on.
Yeah. But it are healthy animals. So, what are we talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, what is happening, of course, is it's certainly how do you call it, circulatory, this animal proteins, to reuse them again. Another question on the same area, these processed animal proteins in poultry feed, is this healthy for chickens, or is it just a protein? Does it have a special positive effect, or is it neutral?
Of course, we need to do more research, and yeah, because it was banned for 20 years, we did not much, it was not possible to do much research. The good news is that Wageningen University, together with the industry, together with the Schothorst already, also, we had a few projects, and in which we showed that there is indeed an extra effect, especially in the bone-rich processed animal protein, so where you have more collagen type of protein, you see reduced wet litter, reduced feather damage. But of course, we will need to do more research to prove it further. But there are indications that it's more than only protein.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, then, well, a last question also on this PAPs. Is this natural for poultry to eat these animal proteins?
That's a very good question, because a lot of people ask themselves this question. But in nature, chickens are omnivorous animals. So they eat animal tissues, not only the worms, but also other animals, small animals, they can eat. So it is nature to eat animal tissues. So therefore, PAPs can be considered as a natural feed ingredient, to my mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what we also see now on several places in the world, also in the Netherlands, is some experiments with insects feeding to poultry, which of course I think is also animal protein. And yeah, it seems, well, I do not know what will be the outcome in the longer term, but at least there are experiments done on that area. And it can certainly be interesting. At least I have seen that they can grow very fast and multiply very quickly. And we say like rabbits. Here in Holland, we say they multiply like rabbits, but insects even multiply faster, I think.
Yeah.
But okay. Yeah, thank you for answering these questions. I also have a question here for Laura. Yeah, it's indeed an interesting question. What I already mentioned a little bit after your presentation. With cattle, we do this precision feeding. With sows, we can do that. If we know the body weight of the sow, we know the number of the sow, how many piglets he has, then the computer can exactly say, okay, we give you this amount of feed. Yeah, I think for poultry that is more difficult. Do you have an idea how to do this in practice, and will it ever be profitable? Because of course this costs money.
Yeah, it's will it be possible? Yes, I think so, because I think we can also make a system in which we can identify the individual birds comparable to what we do in cows and sows.
Yeah.
So and what you said, maybe you can put a leg band or a wing band or something, or a chip somewhere on the bird that you can identify it. And I'm sure that we're also able to make a feeding system that we can feed the individual birds. And will it be profitable? That depends, of course, on what the cost will be of the feeding system. And to be honest, I don't have a clue about the cost of that. If you talk about the identification, I think at the moment it's if you use an identification system, it might be at the moment quite expensive. But I think in the future, chips, for instance, will become cheaper, and that we can use it in the poultry. And will it then be profitable if we have such a system? If you only look to production performance, it might not be, because we're already, especially in Netherlands, we're at a very high level of production performance. But you have to take into account also other things like the health and the welfare of the birds. You probably have less manure, less veterinary costs, and then I think it can be profitable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I see here a question from Mr. Emi from Uganda. I think he was one of my students years ago, but I'm not sure. we can discuss that later. But he has a question: what could be the most practicable approach to ensure that all the birds in the flock receive a uniform nutrient uptake? And the question was for Laura again.
Yeah. For a practical solution, currently, I think the precision feeding is still at a research level, so it's very experimental at the moment. But I think a practical approach can be that you feed birds different diets. So not really the precision feeding that you feed each bird a specific diet, but that you just give the birds that they can choose, for instance, between 2 or 3 diets that differ in nutrients. That might be a practical approach, but then you have to be sure that the birds are really eating to what they need. And I'm not sure about that yet, but that's something that we will study in the coming years, because we have now an interesting project in collaboration also with Canada, with the group of Martin Zuidhof. They have a precision feeding system, and then we will first study what the nutrient requirement will be of the. This will be about layer pullets. So we will first look at amino acid and energy requirements. And thereafter, we will try to make a more practical approach how to apply this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Just another question comes up to me now. That is, okay, here you talk about precision feeding. I can remember that years ago already we were talking about controlled feeding of poultry. What is the difference between these two?
Yeah, I think if you talk about controlled feeding, I think that's especially something that we also do in the breeder birds, so that we really feed them to have a specific target body weight. Yeah. But that's still also on flock level. And with precision feeding, you like to go more to the individual level.
Okay,
so that's more or less the difference.
Yeah, I think that's clear. Yeah. So precision feeding is on bird level, and indeed, controlled feeding is where we try to get to control the whole flock as a total, with a certain feed intake, even water intake we can do. Yeah. Okay. One last question. Well, I'm now just asking questions to you, Laura, so I go on for a while, if you don't mind. If precision feeding will be applied in the future, is it suitable for all types of poultry, or is there certain types where it is more applicable than others?
Yeah, I think you can, what I expect at least is that it will be first of interest for the birds with a longer lifespan, so the laying hens and the breeder birds. And that at the moment that the cost will go down, and that it really shows that that it's profitable, that it will also be adapted for broilers. Yeah, and I think then you have to maybe go to a system that you can also reuse chips or something to make it really of interest. But in principle, we can use it for all types of poultry. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. Then I have a question here for Mr. Brecht. Could you elaborate on the effect of the nutritional emulsifier in making broiler production more environment friendly, and how is this done in practice? There is of course things what you can do in research, but also in real farms this should be applied then.
Yes, indeed. So I already touched this a little bit in my previous answer. But in practice, what people do is they use the matrix values of the nutritional emulsifier that we determined via different digestibility studies. So as already mentioned, we have done quite a lot of digestibility studies in different diets with different fat types. And we have extracted from these general matrix values, which are actually correlated to the amount of total fat in the diet currently used. So when feed formulators then use these matrix values in their feed formulation program, it is very easy to see what would be the benefit of such a nutritional emulsifier. So again, I'm going back to what I mentioned in the pitch. We can actually hit two birds with one stone. So feed formulators and feed producers are able to hit in practice two birds with one stone. We have the effect on the feed cost with this digestibility enhancer or nutrition emulsifier by removing fat and compensating with the nutrition emulsifier. And on the other hand, we also have the impact on the environment, which we calculated together with this Dutch consultancy agency, and is very impressive in my opinion when we compare it, for example, to other feed additives, which also have a life cycle assessment performed for them, for example, amino acids or phytase. Yeah, so in practice, the nutrition emulsifier is being used in reformulating diets and reducing feed cost and saving the environmental impact. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's of course perfect to hear. Just another question in relation to this question is, can this be applied all over the world, everywhere in the feed mills? Or do you say, well, a feed mill should have a certain standard, maybe an own laboratory? I just mentioned something to do these things. Is there certain requirements that is needed to be able to apply these things?
Well, of course, one of the important points is, of course, are feed mills able to do those in low quantities of feed additives, or do they have to do it via the premixer? That's also a possibility. So some of our clients, they ask their premixer to put in this type of additive because they are unable to dose effectively low quantities of the additives. Other feed mills, they are able to incorporate this additive by themselves. So that is one point to take into account. Another point can be a different diet that they are using. But as already mentioned, we have done a lot of studies investigating different diets, different fat types being used. And we see very interesting increases as well. So what we provide are our general matrix values, which take into account all these data and all the effects on different fat types. Yeah.
Thank you. I see here a question for, I think, Ms. Green. How does the current European PAP market look like? Decrease of animal numbers, high transport costs. How is the outlook for the longer term? Green. Did you hear my question, Green?
Was the question to me?
Yeah, the question was to you. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
It was in the Q&A. Yeah. Does the current European processed animal protein market look like? Is there a decrease or is there an increase because animal numbers in Europe are decreasing? The person here says is high transport costs. How is the outlook for the longer term? Let's summarize the question. How is the outlook for the longer term with this PAP?
Thank you for the question. Of course, our production is influenced by the number of animals in Europe because, like I explained, our products are a co-product from meat. So if there's less slaughtering, there is also less co-products. On the other hand, at this moment, a big part of the co-products is still mixed. And in this new legislation, we are only allowed to use single species PAP. So there is also a lot of improvement possible if you look at this moment and the future. So if the product has a lot of value in poultry feed, you will see that the slaughterhouses have more incentive to keep species separate and that there will be invested in that. So at the one hand, yes, the total amount of animal byproducts will decrease, but by more specialization due to the market, you will the coming 10 years there are still possibilities to grow. I think that's the best answer.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Well, we are almost going towards the end. I have a last question here for Brecht. In the opening pitch, you mentioned the possibility of using feed additives to improve the health of birds, but also of the consumers. What practical measures can poultry producers do to achieve this?
Yes, so indeed, I believe this is a very important point to keep making poultry meat attractive for consumers and providing them a valuable product on their table. And in my opinion, feed additives are very well placed to do this because, yeah, there are a lot of feed additives which focus on improving the healthiness of the birds, but also improving the quality of the meat, for example. And in that sense, I always think of selenium. I studied it a lot during my time as a central technical manager at Orffa. Now I'm innovation manager, but okay, selenium still has a place in my heart, I will say. And what we see with different selenium sources is that indeed there is a big difference in the improvement in the antioxidant status, immune status of birds when you provide them different selenium sources, but also in the deposition of selenium into the meat, into the eggs, for example. And I know that in the Netherlands, for example, there are some local projects going on trying to improve the status of eggs, improving the value that they bring to consumers. And one of the focus points is, for example, selenium. And when we can increase selenium status in eggs and meat, and the consumers consume them, then of course they get more selenium into their system. And there are a lot of different positive effects from having more selenium into your system as a human being. And maybe to touch one point is that we see there is a correlation between having more selenium and having less negative effects from corona, the COVID virus. So there's a clear correlation between selenium and the immune status. So I think this is a very important point and has to be raised a little bit more also towards consumers, that they know and appreciate these type of products that can deliver more valuable trace minerals or other type of compounds. Yes.
Thank you very much, Brecht, for this answer. That is to me as a non-expert, simply thinking is, can we not just get selenium in our body on another way by eating some pills or whatever? It's also a possibility, I guess, or yeah. Okay. I have one last question here, and then we will finish this session. It is a question from Mr. Mustafa Hamza. I think the question is maybe on the area of Wim. How agriculture and animal waste contribute to the production of poultry feed in the future? And then he has a very concrete question. Is fish waste suitable as poultry feed in the future, or as a material for poultry feed in the future? Wim.
Yes, thank you for that question. It's a good question. Fish as a raw material is not that much used in chicken nowadays, but of course, it could be an opportunity for certain stages of production or certain types of poultry to be used. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we have come to the end of this webinar. I have a few closing remarks. Well, in this webinar, which was focusing on the largest cost factor of poultry production, of course, the feed, we have seen that where researchers are working on. We also have heard what commercial companies are doing to be ready for the future. And of course, there are many more companies working on this. It's not only these 5 people here. As a whole, a lot of research has been done already in the past. Wim mentioned it already, and I just checked it also on the website, but Schothorst Feed Research started her activities already 83 years ago in 1938 in the Netherlands. So we have already done a lot of research, and still we are not ready with researching. So I expect it will go on. And also, yes, as Wim already said, things will change, circumstances will change, birds will change, even the climate is changing. So yeah, there will always be space for improvement and for research. Yeah, and then I hope that this webinar has given an insight on where research institutes are working on and what commercial companies can do to make poultry production future-proof. I will certainly thank all the speakers, of course, for their presentations. Laura Starr, Karin van Vuren, Brecht Bruneel, and Wim Beeks. This time, ladies first. And also, of course, my thanks for the VIV, making this webinar possible and supporting it. And at last but not least, of course, I will thank also all the audience for attending and participation in this webinar. Without the audience, of course, it would have been impossible. So I will thank you all very much for what you did to make this webinar possible. And I will invite everybody to come to VIV Europe from 31st of June until the 2nd of May in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Here you can meet the speakers. At least I expect and hope that most of you are going there. Here you can meet the speakers and see them in real. And of course, many other companies active in the poultry business will also be on this VIV Europe. I want to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much. And I look forward meeting you all in Utrecht. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.